Paul discovered a very interesting Les Paul for sale over in Germany. It's a beautiful white Les Paul Custom, just ever so slightly aged to have that nice butter creaminess to it. But on top of that, check out how it's spec'd. We've got the witch hat knobs and black plastics adorning it, but look closely on the edge. That's not white. It's a blackback. Is Gibson reissuing the Tuxedo Les Paul Custom? If you're not familiar, in the mid-70s, Gibson actually did make a small handful of these, and Don Dokken was very famous for using one of these, but it's got the white top with the complete back and sides of black. I've always liked those things. They're making tons of custom colors nowadays. How is this special, Trogly? Why does it need to interrupt our regular upload schedule? And it's because, despite how good this looks, pay special attention to the kind of case it has. That's a Gibson USA case. And I know what you're thinking. Okay, maybe the dealer put it in the wrong one. No, come closer to our bridge. That's the Gibson USA style with the hex key adjustments for the Nashville bridge. Furthermore, look down here. That's what they've been using at Gibson USA, the diamond posi locks. I think we are going to see the return of Gibson USA making Les Paul customs. That is huge news. That has not occurred since around 2006-ish when they moved them all to the custom shop. But what's even more so crazy is this thing seems to be very well spec'd out. I mean, if you needed even more proof that this is Gibson USA, here's all the USA case candy. But this still has real mother-of-pearl block inlay. It also appears to have an ebony fretboard. They even have mother-of-pearl on the headstock, which is a big deal. Because I suppose I should clarify that whole 2006 number. That is when the full-blown Les Paul Custom moved into the custom shop. Have there been things that look like Les Paul Customs made outside of that time period? Yeah, like see the Classic Custom series. But those typically had binding just on the top. They left it out on the back. They were just dressed up standards. But despite how good the inlays looked on some of those models, they were acrylic rather than true mother-of-pearl. And for example, on this one, I believe it's baked maple even. Here was another version of the Classic Custom. It just had the customified binding. They were really fancy Gibson USAs. Then don't forget about the custom lights. The 2016 edition of that is probably the most desirable because it has the regular layout without the toggle switch for coil splitting. And then you got the correct inlays. But again, those were acrylic. Same thing with our headstock. They might look the part, but they didn't have the true mother-of-pearl. But that seems to be different this time, which is just mind-boggling. I mean, here we go to the back. In case you didn't believe everything that we've seen before, that's a Gibson USA style serial number dating to the 80th day of 2025. And what's more, we have a volute back here? And it actually looks fairly decent. If these are truly coming out, I'm both really excited and slightly offended at the same time, because wait until you see the title of this. Gibson Les Paul Custom 70s Reissue. Apparently, a 70s reissue just can't belong in the custom shop, so they're going to downgrade it to Gibson USA. But I'm really curious, are they doing early 70s or late 70s? Like, do we have the maple neck with volute? Because in that case, a Nashville bridge does indeed make sense. And having the maple neck would differentiate this between so many different other models, including custom shop that typically has mahogany. Or maybe they're just phoning it in and kind of blending the different elements. Because if this is still a mahogany neck, multi-pieced or not, it should not have the Nashville-style bridge to be considered era correct anyway. But I mean, if we're really getting in their face on that, I mean, technically the posi locks weren't out until the 80s. But reading the listing, even this shop was surprised that Gibson USA was going to do something like this because they don't typically stock this stuff. Now, I do believe this to be a leak, and they claim that there's going to be other finishes as well, but they like the tuxedo look the best. And this particular shop had it listed at 3,000 euros, excluding value-added tax. If we can believe Google, that's about $3,500. To be honest, though, I'm not sure if that price is going to be right. I would imagine these would be just as expensive as the Les Paul Supremes. I mean, those are $4,000. Those are nothing to sneeze at within Gibson USA. They're just as expensive as some custom shops. But if they are indeed $35,000, that would actually be kind of cool. It would certainly help Gibson fight against the used market, and giving them the unique 70s specs makes it so you can't necessarily compare apples to apples, which gives them a little bit of an edge for somebody like me who loves the 70s specs. But I think I'm most excited to see what other colors might there be? If they're doing the tuxedo customs, I mean, are they going to have a nice vintage tobacco sunburst that also has the back and edges bursted? Or are they just going to stick with, black, white, and then the black and white, maybe have a cherry sunburst in there? Time will tell on that. There's only one thing that I am noticing that makes this different from other customs that we've seen in the past. I know it's kind of nitpicky, but you always have to count the laminations of the binding. So this is 5-ply on the headstock, which is correct. Nothing's changed there. But now please direct your attention to the body. It is only 5-ply. Here's a slightly better photo angle, just in case you didn't believe me about that 5th white layer. Whereas traditionally on a Les Paul Custom, we have 7 layers going along, so you get an extra black and white stripe. It's subtle, but if you know to look for it, you'll instantly go, hey, something's not right there. Coming back to this one, you can kind of see what I'm talking about. There's just a little bit of a difference there. But now looking on the back side of the body, let's count our layers here. I only see 3, so 1 black layer running in between 2 white. Whereas on the custom shop regular specs, here's where you typically get the 5-ply binding. So I suppose when you start to take that into account, you can make the argument, why do they have to do any type of 70s spec at all? Because it's not exactly correct. So time will tell if we get the maple neck or not, because unfortunately, the Guitar Points listing here was very sparse in any detailed specs. Wonder if they were told to leak this early just to, build hype around this. It's certainly the most excited I've been for anything for 2025. We'll have to compare it to custom shop. I would imagine it's not going to have the long neck tenon. Okay, I see you, Gibson USA. That's why they chose 70s specs. They've got to be going for late 70s. Those did not have the long neck tenon, so nobody can say on the internet, oh, they didn't get this spec right. If anybody wants to get in line for a new guitar day, let's do it. I'll document every color. That's how excited I am for it. But as far as officially posted things that we can readily buy right now, the Double Trouble series saw a revamping. So I believe previously it was 500 of vintage tobacco burst, and you had 500 in vintage cherry sunburst. They have now doubled the population with another 500, this time in vintage honey burst, as well as a very similar but slightly different vintage bourbon burst. I'm surprised those are still the Burstbucker pickups, 61R and T. I thought for sure those were just going to be the 57 Classics since they were the double creams. Another difference between these Double Troubles, depending on the model, appears to be the back finish. And they've slightly faded the hues of those colors. Those are 2800 if anybody wants to new guitar day. Because maybe there's something else I'm missing here, but as far as a limited edition, I feel 500 of each color might have been too many. I wouldn't buy these with investment in mind, but if you think the guitar is cool and you're buying a standard anyway, yeah. The custom shop has a few new ones at 6,700. We've got a 63 reissue SG Junior. Very limited market, but I will say that is one mighty fine looking Junior. Ebony is the one finish that I think just looks so good when it ages. And yeah, it's artificial and they're doing their best to make it look natural, but I do appreciate those worn through areas exposing the bare mahogany. Sometimes it's, hey, something's been rubbing against it. Other times it's nicks and dings, but it certainly gives it some character, along with its very dark appearance. For me, though, I think at this point I'd rather just buy a vintage original. They're really not that different in price. In fact, it seems a lot of them might actually even be cheaper, depending on what kind of a deal you can haggle on and what wear level that you're interested in. Now, granted, none of these are the ebony finish. And also keep in mind, this thing has a humbucker stock. You can't get that in the vintage realm. So it has its own things going for it, because that seems to be the theme of these new custom shop models. Humbucker Juniors. But this one, I like. They call it Maui Blue for 77. It's a 58 double cut. I like how it's a little bit more green in other areas, and then you can see your wear through areas over here that shows the clear coat aging difference between the finish versus how it started a much brighter hue. And that green and yellow mixed with this really dark tortoiseshell pick guards, nice. And of course they match the back. These vintage originals are very expensive. They're like 10K plus, so that's when a reissue makes a little bit more sense in my opinion. And again, you'll never find an original in this color, especially with this pickup. They also rounded out that series with a Les Paul Junior with the humbucker, but this time in a very bright red color. They called it Cardinal Red. Occasionally you can find players grade juniors, like completely stripped and devoid of all original finish for around that $4,000 to $5,000 range. And depending on who you have refinish it, I suppose you could get close. But Gibson's really not competing with the vintage market. It's just where my brain goes to on these. This is for somebody who falls in love with this specific guitar and wants it brand new, but with the old look. But our next one, I was shocked. I must have missed these. Or they came out slightly after they revamped the Faded series. We can now get Les Paul Juniors in specials with the faded finishes. The Junior comes in 2 different hues. Let's just say the satin walnut looks really cool. It's not super dark. Although I don't think all of them are going to be striped like that. I think Gibson might run into issues if somebody blindly orders one and it has the wood grain that looks like this one. But then there's the Les Paul Special, but you can only get it in TV yellow yet. Hopefully they add more colors. Here's another series that the custom shop's doing. With the SG Special and the Junior, we've got some cool colors. TV Inverness Green and TV Pelham Blue Sparkle. Sparkly blue, but yet still translucent varnish to be able to see the wood grain and have all that going on. That's a unique color combination. And on top of that, it's aged. Now, I suppose rather than sparkle, it looks like they just threw glitter flake in here. So maybe it's not exactly what I was thinking in my head at first. But I'm definitely glad I'm doing this episode. I didn't know about that one. I am confused though. Why didn't they throw the glitter flakes in with the Inverness? Perhaps it was too party-like for them. But they did continue their finish checking. We also have a Heather Poly 64 standard recently introduced. Now keep in mind, pretty much everything we've talked about on Gibson's website, these are .com and Garage exclusives. Now that said, could you made to measure something similar at a different dealer? Yes. But if any of these catch your attention, those are the avenues that you'll have to go through in order to pick one of these up. But I guess the biggest difference here is, hey, we get the Lyre Vibrola on here with our new pink hue. But look at that fretboard. It matches our pink finish suspiciously well. They specifically chose that one for it. I suppose we didn't necessarily talk about these in a specific episode. They brought back the Les Paul Parlor acoustics. I mean, you get red, cherry sunburst, and a vintage sunburst. I like that they brought out something new, but even as a Les Paul lover, it doesn't quite do it for me. Okay, I guess I see what makes them unique. It looks like it's a mahogany back and sides and neck with, get this, a maple top. Wow, yeah, you don't find maple top acoustics as often anyway. Confirmed. All right, I've changed my mind about those. I can appreciate them better now that I understand the specs. But those are $4,000. All right, Troglodytes, I hope you enjoyed the leak and checking out some of these new models with me, and we'll catch you tomorrow on the next one. Take care.